I'm not convinced it ain't no acting or accident what the track emits. You strapped with gas that you ain't even practiced with. The fact is, you couldn't hit the...
Welcome to 3-Count Commentaries, as we discuss Impact Wrestling from December the 2nd, 2021, in which we're back to regularly scheduled Impact, and oh boy, oh boy, I lobbed out there the mere thought of not reviewing Impact and got deluged in negativity. So, okay, since so many people apparently like me talking about Impact, because very few people do, I want to continue talking about Impact. But Impact ain't helping. They need to help this process along. They need to grease the wheels a little bit. They're literally strangling me with Eddie Edwards. But there were still some interesting things that took place. The opening segment, however, was very interesting. Matt Cardona came out there to talk about Moose costing him in his match against Morrissey. It says that he came to Impact for the sole reason of being world champion, which means he's there to beat Moose. Moose came out there, talked about Cardona's 18 years in the business, said that he accomplished a lot, got a hot wife, a mansion, a lot of toys, and, has traveled the world. But then it said that, do you really want to have a match with me? A match with me will last as long as your Intercontinental Championship reign, and that I see you the same way they do, which is a mid-carder. And then Matt Cardona got real tight-assed about that. And he said you should change your name to Mid-Cardona. Say it again. I dare you to say it again. And he says, you're a mid-carder. And then they started fighting. After that, Morrissey came out there to help Moose. Then, of course, Eddie Edwards came out there. Eddie. Lordy B. Jesus H. Oh, my God. Who decided that Eddie Edwards was the John Cena of Impact? Who made that decision? Who sat down and game planned that Eddie Edwards is going to be the conquering hero coming out there to save everybody during Impact? What on earth? What on earth? And I heard some ridiculous stuff about Impact. I was very excited to do this Impact review, as you could probably tell in my voice, because Gail Kim said some things. We're going to talk about that later, though. I forgot to drop that bomb on you in the intro. Gail Kim, what she said earlier. Anyway, Eddie Edwards came out there to make the save. Of course, the tag team match was made. Eddie Edwards and Matt Cardona versus Moose and Morrissey. Nobody call him John Morrison. W. Morrissey. And I like the Mid-Cardona. Mid-Cardona was hilarious. The WWE reference here didn't upset me because it folded into what Moose is saying in terms, and it makes perfect sense because he's not talking about somebody else. He's talking about Matt Cardona. Now, the thing that doesn't really make much sense is that Matt Cardona was Intercontinental Champion for 24 hours. So is Moose saying that your title run with me, a match with me, is going to last 24 hours? Because that doesn't make you sound very tough. But it does. It makes sense if you don't take it literally. He's basically saying you're a flash in the pan as Intercontinental Champion. You'll be a flash in the pan in the match against me. Okay, sure. I accept that. And I'm okay with that. Matt Cardona wanted a singles match for the world title. Scott D'Amore, who apparently is the only guy booking anything around Impact, says that he had to go out and prove himself. So they went out there and had this dry ass tag team match. And I call it dry as shit because it seems like every Impact main event, even though they have fans in the building, it still feels dry. There's something about Impact that just feels like it's just there. Like it's present. Like sometimes Raw feels that way too, where the fans are there, but they just kind of not there too. And they just kind of, there's people there, but do they care? Not really. And so that's kind of how Impact fans are. They're not wild, and the AEW fans at least have that. They at least have like tremendous energy. And Impact fans, it's natural noise for the things that they're doing, but it also kind of feels unnatural too because they respond only in the right places. There's no real chants. There's no bantering back and forth. The wrestlers don't really even acknowledge the crowd. and the crowd doesn't really acknowledge the wrestlers in the ring. Except for, with the exception of like singing Eddie Edwards' theme song, there really is no banter back and forth between the wrestlers and the audience, which is what you need. And WWE really thrives on it, and AEW does too. And I think that takes the company to the next levels when you can have, and it should be constantly engaging the fans anyway. So it should be constantly, guys, instead of standing in the ring and during their monologues or whatever, should constantly be going back and forth with the fans and stuff like that. So these Impact matches feel so damn dry. I mean, bone dry. So this bone dry main event was what it was. Matt Cardona wins the match by countering, I think a Uranagi Moose was trying to do to him, into a victory roll. So they told the story at the beginning. Moose took Matt Cardona lightly. He ended up costing him in the match later on. Before this match took place, though, Moose was talking to Morrissey and said, hey, it behooves us to take out Matt Cardona. And Morrissey said, look, that ain't got nothing to do with me, boss. I'm not going to take out Matt Cardona for you. And Moose said, look, if you want a title shot, and Morrissey said, look, you're not going to give me a title shot. I already know it. So I'm not going to help you take out Matt Cardona, even though he had already just helped him. But I'm going to ignore that. Moose then said, okay, guaranteed Morrissey a title shot. That was the impetus for Morrissey to kick Moose in the face after the match. So you had a heel turn on a heel. Okay. All right. I mean, I kind of saw it coming. But, Matt Cardona as the next challenger is fine. I think he's kind of been low key since he came to Impact. I don't think his heart was fully in it at first. I'm one of these guys that I always kind of look down. I thumb down the concept of you bringing in a WWE guy and pushing him to the top. But I think that Matt Cardona was one of those guys, a lot like Christian was when he was on the Independents the first time, is that everybody wants to see him in a top spot. And it seems like, even though it's 9 years too late, he would have been one of the guys where it would have been okay for him to come in and get a top spot, because he's a perennial mid-carder, sure, but he's one of those guys where it seemed like it was destined to be that there was an audience there for him that just wasn't being served, and that, there was a place for it and a time for it. And I still think Impact did the right thing in not doing it immediately. And, using him as a sort of a springboard for Moose, I think is really good. So it's okay. I think he was being too low key at one point. I don't think he should have been world champion, but Matt Cardona is definitely one of the guys that since they got him, you might as well use him. And then he is, a recognizable name and a recognizable face. And it's sad that I truly believe GCW did better with Matt Cardona than Impact has. And he wasn't in GCW that long. And he's still doing GCW, if I'm correct. Yeah, he is. He's still doing GCW. So his short run as GCW World Champion was excellent because he was a heel and he knew exactly what to do, how to rile up that audience. And Impact, that's why you shouldn't have guys doing two different things, because Matt Cardona's engagement with that audience in GCW was so epic and was so fantastic. It was on Twitter and it was in the actual arenas, where not only because they gave him that great reaction and throwing shit at him, but even when I saw clips of his performances, how he was dressing like the Macho Man or he dressing like Vince McMahon, and he got to go out there and just have fun fucking with these people. Like Impact should be trying to take advantage of that. They should. But they draw nothing in terms of TV. But they also, put guys in these dry situations. Like, come on, fix this shit. I think these guys have shown that they can, that they have some ability in order to, antagonize and draw in a hardcore fan base. Let's do that. And less of Eddie Edwards and sweatshirts. Who gives a fuck about that guy? All right. Violent by Design. They did a promo. Eric Young said, talking to Rhino and Heath, you thought that family was the most powerful thing, but this is a real family, and that you guys were just a building blocks to the monument of violence, and that Willie Mack and Rich Swann were next, and tag team titles are the goal, and they're going to continue laying the foundation for the monument to violence. Promptly, Diener went out there with Joe Doring to wrestle Rich Swann and Willie Mack, and were defeated by a 450 splash by Rich Swann. So I guess that monument is still under construction. Whenever Diener's in the match, you know they're going to lose. In any event, Rhino and Heath came out there to make the save because, of course, Violent by Design jumped Rich Swann and Willie Mack after the match. And it was what it was. They did set up I think it was Eric Young versus Rhino street fight for next week. That sounds like it'll be fun. It's in both of their element. Rhino, of course, with the ECW thing. Eric Young he can do that stuff. So I'm actually looking forward to that. So that's good, and I think this probably be the blow off to that feud, because I think it's really been mostly Rhino versus Eric Young anyway. So I'm begging Impact to do something different, though. This is what I mean by being very dry in their main events. Like, they've had street fight main events before. I think they just had one with the Full Metal Mayhem with what was it, Edwards and Moose, right? Why not do a steel cage match or a first blood match or something like that? Like, it's not WWE. WWE, they're so limited in the stuff that they can do because it's PG. Impact, as far as I know, is not PG. And they need the TV bump. So they need to do something. They need to do something, bruh. All these women want to be in the Ultimate X match. I'm going to combine two segments because there's a bunch of women who wanted to be in the Ultimate X match. Jordan Grace, Rachel Ellering, Tasha Steelz, Savannah Evans, Alicia Edwards, and Chelsea Green all want to be in. Scott D'Amore said that he will announce the 6 names. Instead of having them wrestle for it, he's going to announce the 6 names. Next week, Tasha Steelz and Savannah Evans got into the face of Jordan Grace and Rachel Ellering. They got into an argument where Savannah Evans and Tasha Steelz called Rachel Ellering a loser. So they decided that they were going to fight tonight, Savannah Evans versus Rachel Ellering. And Savannah Evans lost to Rachel Ellering. And weird decision. Very weird decision. For starters, let's talk about this. Let's discuss this for a moment, momentarily. Rachel Ellering has the worst theme song I've ever heard, probably. When it comes to just generic pop music that you probably would have heard at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on MTV, but it's not a hit. It's just a random song featuring a random band singing about random happy stuff. It is awful. I'm pretty sure she had no input into this song because this song has no flavor. It has no style. It is awful. And I need to take a moment to talk about how terrible her theme song is. Because I've heard it 100 times now. And there's nothing good about it. There's nothing good about it. It's terrible. Please change her theme song to something more serious. It is awful. It is not good. It sounds like something, Rachel Ellering's daughter would listen to. All right, the first match of the show was Matthew Raywalt, who is still there, versus Chris Sabin. This match was apparently set up after Chris Sabin defeated Ace Austin because he was wearing his I Am Chris Sabin t-shirt. Matthew Raywalt said he wanted to understand, quote-unquote, the art of Chris Sabin, which was an odd way of challenging him to a match. Deonna Purrazzo joined us on commentary, where she talked about going back to basics, even though she has nothing to prove, but she still wants to become the Knockouts champion. During the match, she distracted Chris Sabin, which brought out Mickie James to beat her up. Matthew Raywalt ended up losing to the Cradle Shock when Chris Sabin continues his monster push to nowhere, because I know he's not going to be world champion again. Probably not going to be X Division champion again. So we're still giving Chris Sabin a monster push for literally nothing. Not saying that Matthew Raywalt should have won because he sucks. So no, I didn't care about this. Didn't care about this at all. And they're going to double down because they're going to make Chris Sabin and Mickie James versus Matthew Raywalt and Deonna Purrazzo for next week. I love Deonna Purrazzo. I love Mickie James. Not a fan of the other two. Chris Sabin is okay, but they don't do anything with him that is interesting. He did Sexy Chris Sabin on the Wrestle House thing. That was fun. That was cool. But whatever they're doing with him in this wrestling stuff is not interesting. It's not interesting at all. So some guy appeared wearing nail polish, and he wanted to have a match on Impact. And he sounded, I'm going to just say it because I don't care. He sounded like a teenage girl in the mall. I really, really, really want to have a match. I want to show who I am. And I was kind of like, no, I don't know what's going on here. I didn't know what his name was. I just wrote, the kid insists on having a match. And Scott D'Amore gave him a match against Jonah. So they did show his name later, which is Jay Vidal. And, okay. So Jonah defeated this Jay Vidal dude. It was a squash match. Jonah, after the match, said that he takes over wherever he goes, and that Moose is the world champion, and that's why he attacked him in New Japan. Decision making. But he all he's heard about is how Josh Alexander is the best wrestler in the world. So he says, to Josh Alexander, to be the best, you got to go through the top dog. And then he starts to bark. He started barking. He's a barker. How hilarious is that? How hilarious is that? His promo wasn't bad. It was short and to the point. I just found it hilarious. That's it. Hopefully this guy can really show us that Thick Boy days were not exactly his best material. Him in a quick squash matches for the best. That's a good thing, though. Establish this guy as being a monster right off rip. So I like that. Trey Miguel is still the X Division champion, but he's upset because he wanted to beat up Steve Maclin. Then he got his opportunity because Steve Maclin attacked him in the middle of this promo. And then they had an extended fight scene where the two of them are just tackling each other and throwing random punches. They ended up beating up a security guard. Steve Maclin threw a box of stuff. I think it might have been a toolbox, but it might have also been a radio or stereo from like 1986. I don't know what the hell it was. It was a big silver thing that he threw and missed. It ended up being a ton of security and referees and stuff separating them. Decent brawl, I guess. Again, very dry. It's just something about Impact. They just need some flavor, need some spice. But at least they're going to continue this storyline. But it's continuing almost exactly the way I said it would. That they put Laredo Kid in that position to get jobbed out. And then instead of just letting him and Trey Miguel have their match, they jobbed him out so Maclin wouldn't lose, which sucks. We got another How to Be a Pro Wrestler with Brian Myers and his gang. This is episode 52. I forget what it's called. Zicky Dice stole Brian Myers' phone number from Mid-Cardona while he was in the ring. Then he called him on FaceTime, and Brian Myers hung up on him. Then VSK called him on FaceTime. The two of them suggested that they need a substitute teacher since Brian Myers, I guess, is injured or sick or whatever. Then they said that they were going to have a tag team match against some guys who I didn't write their names down, but promised that they were going to turn it around. I don't see why they promote them on Impact and then have them wrestle on before the Impact or whatever that digital media thing they're doing. I don't watch none of that shit. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I really don't know what they're doing. Sam Beal was there. Now he's not. I don't know if the storyline with Sam Beal is over. I don't know where Sam Beal went. Brian Myers, is he hurt? Is he sick? Is he dying? I don't know. I have no idea what's going on anymore. And I watch this shit every week. Tennille Dashwood is back. She wants to know what was going on since she's been gone. Madison Rain told her that there were new Knockouts Tag Team Champions and there were two Australian girls, to which Tennille was distraught because being Australian is her gimmick. And she said she's going to go and find out what's up with these new Australian girls because she's going to tell them that being Australian is her gimmick. So they marched together, the two of them with Caleb, and they found the inspiration putting lipstick on one another and being very weird. And then they meet one another, they stare each other down, and it turns out that Tennille is friends with Cassie and Jesse. So because they're all Australian, right? So they're all friends. And Madison Rain is standing there, and she's shocked that they're all good buddies. Like, why are you surprised by that? That should have been a surprise. But certainly it was all in WWE at the same time, I believe. So, I know Tenille's been gone for a while, but I'm pretty sure she was there when they were there, So it makes sense that all the Australian girls, not just because they're Australian, but because they're all in WWE at the same time. So this has become like a mega faction, it seems like. And now Tenille is friends with the Inspiration. And Madison Rain says she's friends with Tenille, is friends with the Inspiration. So now this mega faction of these four women, well, these four women, one guy, they're going to set them up in a match against Decay. That means Decay is two men, two women. So because Impact does intergender matches, they're going to have Tenille Dashwood, Madison Rae, Cassie, whatever, and Jesse, whatever, wrestle Taurus, Crazy Steve, Rosemary, and Havoc. And that makes sense to people. That makes sense to people. I don't know why you would write that. I can't wait to talk about Gail Kim, man. Because Gail Kim, oh boy. Is that the show? Oh no, that's not the show. Because it's one more thing. So Swingman and Hernan Daddy are very happy, and the Swingman is back in the groove. He's very happy. He's in good spirits. Good spirits, Swingman. Hernan Daddy told him, like, look, if you would have gotten married, this was going to be your wedding gift. And he had Swingman's giant roll of cash. Well, actually, I think it was Hernan Daddy's giant roll of cash that he was going to give to the Swingman. So Swingman is thrilled about that. Rohit Raju saunters over with all the charisma of a wet sponge and says that, they should take that roll of cash and invest it into his cryptocurrency. To which, Swinger was like, who is this guy and why is he talking to me? So Rohit says that he wasn't invited to Russell House, which of course he wasn't, because Russell House, at least that thing, was actually for people who were funny in some way. Then Lawrence D appears, and Lawrence D says that Rohit was not invited to Wrestle House because he did not want the riffraff around his house. I call this man riffraff. Rohit, of course, denied being riffraff, because why would you want to accept that you were riffraff? Oh, buddy. Then, of course, they ended up having a match next week, and I'm not thrilled about that. All right, so that's Impact. Some thoughts on the show. I liked Tenille Dashwood and the Inspiration being friends. That's good. That's good character development. They all vapid characters together. And I've said it before that their gimmicks were very similar. And I'm glad Impact noticed that their gimmicks were very similar and just combined them together. I know it's going to end up with them breaking apart eventually, but I like it. I like it for right now. I like the Jonah stuff. Okay, that was good. Violent by Design continues to be pretty good, except for the fact that Diener is a loser. Anthony Pettis was in the crowd. Very interesting. I wonder, is he done with MMA? I don't know. What is he doing nowadays? And D'Lo Brown continues to be very bad on commentary. I don't think that it's a stretch to say that he's one of the worst commentators in the business. Everything sounds forced with D'Lo. I'm pretty sure this is the first. Is this the first time I've ever criticized D'Lo on commentary? It feels like him. I should have been saying this for a while, but D'Lo does not sound natural at all on commentary. He sounds awful, and it's pretty much every week. Look, it's not. Josh Matthews is terrible. Josh Matthews is the worst of all time. He is the worst commentator. Well, I guess if Mike Adamle counts, Mike Adamle is very bad, but Josh Matthews, I'm talking boring, no charisma, no good turn of phrase, no great calls, no passion, no nothing. Josh Matthews is awful, but D'Lo Brown is his black counterpart because he's almost exactly the same way. Even things that are supposed to be a surprise, D'Lo doesn't come across as being legitimately surprised or legitimately shocked. It's all like, oh, why would you do that, man? And it's like, D'Lo, please get off this. Shut up, man. All right, so let's talk about Gail Kim for a moment. I got some Gail Kim stuff. We're gonna read an article from Gail Kim when she was talking on a podcast. Okay, so let's do that right about now. So Gail Kim was talking to who is he talking to? But for starters, I'm getting this from WrestleZone. So who is she talking to? Wrestling with Stereotypes, which of course I don't even know. I don't know who these people are, but I'm guessing with a name like that, it is clearly a let's call it a den of progressivism. I'm just gonna guess that's what it is, especially from reading Gail Kim's comments. So here's what she had to say. She made two statements that I thought were particularly interesting. So on the first statement is on diversity, which of course diversity is the most important thing on earth. And when it comes to pro wrestling, I mean, not the fact that your company gets sub 100,000 viewers. It is the fact that we're diverse. We do diversity, right? The fact that nobody watches the fucking show is not the problem. The fact is we do diversity. So this is from November the 23rd. So last Tuesday, I believe. So she starts the thing talking about whether Vince McMahon really understands diversity or what it means. So she talks about Vince, who, one of the things is Martin Luther King is one of his, Martin Luther King Jr. rather, is one of his heroes. And she says she doesn't know it for sure, but she's heard from people that she trusts that it's a fact. But says that he is one of those people that says, quote, "Oh, if I hire ethnic people, that makes me not racist," which is the equivalent of saying I have a black friend, so I'm good, right? It's like, what do you mean? So that's how this whole thing, that's the lead in to this thing. Then she says that she compares that mindset to Impact. So she says, I mean, if you look at all the Asian wrestlers they have in that company, meaning WWE, please give Impact one of them. I'm begging you. Their only logic, the majority of the time, is to put them together, and I just don't understand why you can't have two individual Asian girls or two black girls who are really talented. Take the skin color out, take out the ethnicity, look at their talent, and give them a chance to take that ball and run with it. That's the frustrating part of it all. When I worked at TNA, that was never a question. We never even thought about Awesome Kong was black and I was Asian. We never thought about it. It was just me and Kia, Gail and Kia doing their thing. And then she starts talking about how they're not doing right by Naomi. Now, the latter part, some people are going to agree with, and that's your business. I don't know about Naomi. It is what it is. They're constantly bringing in new girls. Naomi kind of got lost in the shuffle. But here's the thing. I literally just watched Impact, right? And what is Rich Swann and Willie Mack? Are they two black guys? One of them is doing a dancing gimmick, by the way. Isn't that a stereotype? Why is nobody calling that out? Why nobody says, why is Willie Mack and Rich Swann tag team? And if you can't partner up people who kind of look alike, you're doing such a great job with all the Mexicans you had on this roster, because you did a great job with Laredo Kid. He got jobbed out and doing nothing. What about Taurus? Black Taurus? Oh, he's not on a team with other Hispanics. Yeah, he's clearly lost in the shuffle, though. I mean, you have you're grouping like objects. For starters, it makes more sense. Especially if you're trying to groom one of these people to come along, you bring in somebody who's more experienced, which is usually what they do. In WWE, it wasn't just a matter of here's two Asians. When you look at the Kabuki Warriors, you had Asuka and Kairi Sane, right? In one instance, you had Asuka, who was already over. She's a little bit older. Kairi Sane is smaller, younger, but she's undersized and was injury prone. So they brought them together as a way of, hey, you guys probably hang out already anyway. I know that some of them are friends already, and it makes sense for them to be friends already. In the issue of Jacket Time, for instance, you have Kushida, who is, again, older, has had his run in Japan. He's not really getting over in the United States. And Jiro, who is a new talent. He's very young. He's very energetic. And to be quite honest, I think his English is better than Kushida's English. So they brought them together to do it's kind of stereotypical, even though it's I don't see what's stereotype about jackets. Like it's Jiro's gimmick. But just to have two people who are of the same background, they can't be tag team partners. This is a brain rot that has gone through wrestling. And I saw your boy Big Nasty when I did that video on him, and he talked about the Lucha Brothers being like, all the Mexicans have to play together. It's like, that's not how, like, when you look at Mexican wrestling, it's all Mexicans. So, like, of course, they're used to working together. They speak the same language. It's always easier for them to help each other along. And it's easier for them to understand what other people are saying, because they're not all going to have the same level of competence when it comes to English. They're not all going to be over in the same way. If it's something that allows one to help the other, then what is the problem? What is the issue? Not every tag team has to be some Ebony and Ivory, some Rush Hour tag team. And it's okay to have tag teams of ethnic backgrounds. It's okay. I'll be the first to tell you that. Yeah, there's a place for where you can say these two characters have nothing to do with each other. Why are they partners? And it must be because they're the same race. But that doesn't necessarily happen that often. Usually there's a good reason for it, even if it's a non-canon reason, where you can like the jacket time thing with Kushida and Jiro. Kushida wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't really getting over. So the idea of bringing in Jiro, who is, more comedic, more personality based, it actually helps Kushida, as opposed to Kushida, who spent most of his time in NXT by himself, not as part of a tag team or doing anything else. And even though he did do the one match with Alex Shelley, which I thought was pretty cool, but nobody has this problem when it's Undisputed Era and it's 4 white guys. Nobody says, like, why are all the white guys together? Nobody has that problem. Nobody cares. Nobody's complaining about Trick and Mello being put together and they're 2 black guys. Nobody cares about Rich Swann and Willie Mack being put together. Why is it only when it's Mexicans or Asians or Arabs, even though it doesn't happen that often when it comes to Arabs, because there's not a lot of them in wrestling. What is the issue there? Like, there shouldn't be any issue. It should just be what it is, And sometimes these people might want to be tag team partners. Sometimes they might want to be friends. Ring of Honor, you had Shane Taylor Promotion. Shane Taylor goes on and on and on about diversity. All he talks about is diversity. All he cares about is diversity. And his stable was only black people. How diverse was that? Are you going to say that he was a racist? Oh, I'm sorry. The progressive mindset says that he cannot be racist because he's black. So this stuff makes zero sense. And Gail Kim, she should be worried about the business of Impact and not about the diversity of WWE. But let's talk about something else, because she continued. Well, WrestleZone continues. On Saturday, November 27th, they posted another article, I guess from the same conversation, where she's talking about utilizing all characters. So she says in this particular piece, I've always felt the same in terms of being accepted as a person, no matter what ethnicity anyone was. And this is the one thing I'll always say to any talent that I'm talking to, if there's any potential, if there's a potential of them coming to work for us, I say, listen, this crew, they are so good at using everybody. No one is wasted on our roster. This is false. False. A strong false. All right? There's several people on the roster. Now, I guess if you mean they put you somewhere, then I guess so. But Wrestle House segments where there's 42 people on screen and everybody get to say one sentence, that's not using everybody. That's not utilizing anybody's potential. The Brian Myers stuff, okay. If you want to create a small faction, something like that, all right, I can give you credit for that. Violent by Design, I can give you credit for that. But there's a lot of people on Impact who are just floating. They're present, but are they really doing anything? Not really. If you're technically, they're wrestling, so we're putting money in their pocket, I guess. But you can say the same thing for WWE or the 24/7 segments where it's just guys running around the ring and they get paid for being on TV because they were on TV for 10 seconds. They ran around the ring and ran to the back. You know, they had just as much impact on the show as Jake something wrestling on YouTube somewhere. You know, Gail Kim, I mean, you need to focus on the business of Impact. You know, doing these progressive blogs or whatever the fuck to talk about diversity is, I'm guessing that's why she got this job, you know? And to be quite honest, that's really all I see when it comes to this kind of stuff. 'Cause it's almost always women in these positions talking about how diverse other people's companies are. And every time you get these diversity hires, the company starts to shrink. Every single time. Gail Kim has been on the whole diversity kick for about a year or some change now. And Impact has only gone down ever since. You know, look at Maria Kanellis. Look at where Maria, being the new diversity officer or whatever the fuck she was for Ring of Honor, the head of the women's division. Oh, now Ring of Honor is basically going the fuck out of business. So maybe we need to focus on the business of pro wrestling and not so much on social justice issues. How about that? How about we focus on getting people to watch this fucking show? You know, getting some fucking talent in this on this thing. And less on Gail Kim and Maria Kanellis' pet projects, which is sniping at WWE and wasting everybody's fucking money and time. Do something that actually adds to the company, and people will then say, you know what? Gail Kim being in creative has really made this company flourish. Instead of, well, she's doing a great job for women's wrestling. What if it fucks up the rest of the company? Who cares? If it puts all these people out of business, who the fuck cares? Now, I'm not saying that Impact is going to go out of business because it clearly is not. Impact is owned by Anthem, which also owns Access. So, you know, they're not going to go out of business. Not in a traditional sense. But when you look at Sinclair, which owned broadcasting networks, and Ring of Honor still managed to botch that bag, it's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility that Gail Kim could fuck up the bag. It's entirely possible. So my thing is, she should probably shelve any and all diversity topics until this show is turned around and it's better than it was. And it has been this week or been period. Until business is starting to go on the uptick. You know, maybe then we can have some conversations about what it means and what the strategies of success are. Because you're arguing with people. You know, Vince he's already tried to do this shit. He tried women's divisions in the 80s. It didn't really work. He tried it again in the 90s. It didn't work. The only thing that seemed to stick is women in thongs playing in mud and all that kind of stuff. People really loved that. That's why they did it for so long. And because of that, you had an opportunity to have a women's division where there was some wrestlers mixed in. And then, of course, they transitioned a lot of those, you know, the sexy flexy stuff out and was able to create the women's division that they have now. And now you've got the women main eventing shows, main event at WrestleMania, for fuck's sake, twice. And still Gail Kim is talking about, I don't know about the diversity on WWE. It's like, shut up. You know, they're losing more money doing diversity than you are making doing diversity. They're losing money doing it. You're not making money doing it. So it doesn't make, like, I truly don't believe anybody, and there was talk, and I don't really believe this, that people had walked out on the Sasha Banks Bianca Belair main event of WrestleMania. I don't even believe that. But let's just say it did happen. That causes, even though people aren't going to walk out on the main event mainly because they already paid for it. So why would you pay to go to WrestleMania and then walk out of the main event? That doesn't make sense. Because WrestleMania tickets got to be expensive. So you wouldn't walk out. Now, you walk out on a house show, maybe. But on WrestleMania, probably not. That's why I don't believe it. It's got nothing to do with Sasha Banks was so great or anything like that. It's just common sense. You're not going to spend big money for WrestleMania tickets and then walk out before you even see the close of the show. It just doesn't make sense. But WWE does not really make a lot of money off of the women's revolution concept, you know, and Impact has been running around beating this drum about how we did it first. We were the first to do all of the women's X Division stuff and intergender matches and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, you're doing all that shit. And guess what? It really sunk the company. This where Impact is now compared to what Impact was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, let alone 10 or 15, right? You could compare it to its modern iterations. It sucks compared to what it was just 2 or 3 years ago. It's no. Gail Kim should not be having any talks. Nobody should be talking to Gail Kim about anything except finding ways to monetize Impact and make this shit more viable and make it shit something people want to watch. Because every time you turn around, there's new people creating new reasons to not watch Impact. Oh, Moose is the champion. Moose is black, by the way. But Moose is the champion. I'm not watching Impact because he's a wife beater or something like that. And you're like, oh wow, I didn't know that. Not like it matters, but I didn't know that. I knew that, of course, but there's other people telling people that and they didn't know it. And you got all of this stuff that's going on. Rich Swann is another one, world champion, wife beater, was arrested for beating his wife. Not saying that he, did anything wrong or whatever the case may be, but it was what it was. You got a lot of problematic characters, and that's what a lot of the progressive wrestling fans say about Impact. They say, oh, look at their roster. It's all, guys who beat their wives and all kinds of other problematic individuals. And you're kind of like, it is what it is. I'm the kind of guy who says, Moose was a different guy back then. I don't know the intricacies of that situation. Same thing with Rich Swann. I don't know the ins and the outs of it. I'm not going to hold it against him. I'm not saying he should never have another job because of it. But, the people she's appealing to are the people who are saying that stuff. That he should never be world champion because he's a wife beater. And how nobody actually came about that question. How about you talking about the place of women and all this kind of stuff when you got world champions that beat their wives or that was accused of beating their wives? Let me be a little bit more precise. Fuck out of here, Gail Kim. You're losing at every level. I can out progressive you, and I can look at the numbers to this show and say that whatever you're doing it wrong. So while we're listening to Gail Kim, fuck Gail Kim. And that's why it's always been fuck Gail Kim on this channel. If you're a Gail Kim supporter, rethink your positions. She's not helping. If you really want, you need to find some non-politically brain-wormed female wrestler to lead your women's division. Because Gail Kim is brain rot completed. She's completely brain rot. I don't see I know, she's a legend there. So she kind of gets that backstage, push because and plus she's Scott D'Amore's girl, which is the real reason why, Gail Kim got pushed the way she did in Impact, but nobody wants to talk about that. Just like, Trish Stratus was Vince's girl. And so she got the big push. Scott D'Amore and Gail Kim were super fans of each other. So she got the big push in TNA. Of course, that's got to keep that on the low. Don't talk about that. Same reason Scott D'Amore is pushing Josh Alexander right now. It's all political, man. It's horse shit. But because it's Impact, nobody gives a fuck. Except me. Because there's something to talk about. Anyway, thank you guys for listening to my review of Impact with added bonus material of me ranting about Gail Kim. If you made it this far, then you like what I do. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for the 1,000 subscribers. I haven't said that in any video so far. I'm trying to avoid talking about it. But thank you guys for your time. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.